Hey guys, welcome to the Same Opinion podcast, where every other week we get together and talk about video games and video game related stuff. As always, I'm Shanae Howard, and with me is Tommy Shelby
Hello, everyone.
and Ryan Robinson.
Hi,
So guys, what have y'all been playing?
Tommy.
So I've been playing an assortment of fighting games. We won't go into that. I feel like that's every week just about now. But I have been playing Ghostwire Tokyo, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I didn't really know what to expect from that thing going in. Like, when they first showed that... Well, it's that Tango Gameworks game, so it's the guys that did, The Evil Within, you know? And that studio is headed up by Shinji Mikami, so you figure it's going to be survival horror. And the first trailer that they ever showed for that game really seemed very horror heavy, but it's not. It's not that, you know.
Are you disappointed by that?
No, there's still some ghoulies in there, you know. But I would not call it a horror game at all. But I don't know. The game seems very divisive, you know. Like, I've seen people that really praise it and people that are really down on it, and why is it that when people have opinions online, it's one extreme or the other?
I don't know. It's
Either this game is a fucking masterpiece or it's garbage.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ghostwire Tokyo is a good game, you know? It's just that. It's just good.
Yeah.
But I'm really enjoying my time with it, though.
Well, there's two very vocal. There's not just two. There's multiple vocal groups.
Sure.
Most people aren't really posting online unless they do have a very extreme result. Because I don't really go I'll go on IMDb or Reddit or whatever about a movie or something to see what people are saying about it and look at reviews or things like that. And it's normally people who IMDb. I'll get more mild ones, but it's normally one or two or the other. They either hate it or love it. And also if you're more passionate about it, one way or the other, you're probably going to be more vocal.
Yeah. But, it's an open world game, and it does a lot of the things that most open world games do. You go to little check marks that clear out more of the map and add more objectives to your map, and there's a lot of collectibles and crap like that. And, all of that is very much by the books.
How's the ghost?
But, that's really neat, you know? That's what, the game is unique, right? The gameplay of the game is not unique. But, the game itself, the setting, and, just the overall atmosphere and what the things you were doing, it's very unique. I haven't played anything else quite like it.
Yeah.
But, all the little magics that you have, they all equate to different guns, right? You've got one that's basically a rifle, one that's basically a shotgun, one that's basically a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's just a fun game. It's not amazing, but it's fun.
Does he do different hand gestures for each magic?
Yes.
Okay, because I am curious. Yes. I am curious what the rocket launcher magic hand gesture is like, because I'm picturing this.
It's just a fun game. If you're looking for something to play that's you're definitely going to feel like you're going through the motions, you know,
sure.
But sometimes that's enough.
Right.
I'd say if you enjoy fucking Far Cry.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
So probably this.
You feel like you're playing an open world video game.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds fun. I've been wanting to pick that game up. I've got so much other stuff ahead of it, but
yeah,
it looks really
I would
cool.
say they put out this prelude for the game. It's free downloadable prelude, and it's a visual novel.
Right.
That does have it's interesting because it's got some gameplay things in there that I'm man, more VNs should do stuff like this.
Like what?
But just obviously there's choices you can make that make the thing replayable, right?
That's the only thing really about visual novels.
Right. But there are fights, oddly enough, and they're not it's hard to describe. It's not turn-based. It's not action oriented. It's just like a little thing you can do,
Right.
you know. But either way, not that it's super fun. It's only about half an hour long, but like it will give you a lot more context for the story and what's going on and all that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But you, Ryan?
So I've been playing. Well, my wife and I have been playing Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
You were very stoked.
Yeah.
Did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, actually, it's a really cool.
Yeah.
It's neat, right? And I think that honestly, that the entire presentation of this game, I think, is what they were going for with that DLC for Borderlands 2, which is basically in the same setting, except they like lean a lot harder into the fantasy in terms of like not just setting, but like in terms of weapons and abilities and stuff like that. So one of the things that's different straight off the bat from and in this game from other Borderlands games is you create your own character as opposed to choosing some from one of 4 pre-made characters. And you give them a class. You have the Stabomancer, the Berserker, like Burr, like cold. The Grave.
There must be some clovers in the atmosphere. Got it.
There's the Graveborn, who is like like kind of like the Necromancer kind of character. Then you have a character. You have a character called the class called the Sporemonger or Spore Warden. I'm sorry. And he's basically like an archer who specializes in poisons, and you get a little mushroom guy that follows you around and like fights alongside you. And then you have, I think there's one other one that I missed that I'm forgetting. Oh, the Clawbringer, who has like a little dragon that follows him around and like shoots fire and stuff. And each of the classes plays like they have like really cool little abilities that they can do. Like the Graveborn like has this skill where they sacrifice some of their health to damage enemies around them, but like the more enemies that are around you, the more health you get back for hurting them. And with the Spore Warden, his little mushroom guy, like you once you level him up enough, he lets out like this big fart that basically serves as a taunt. So like all the enemies will focus on him while they're like being poisoned and stuff. And you know they have other things like there aren't grenades in this game. Instead, you have spells. So you have lightning spells and poison spells and fire spells and stuff like that, and they all have like different effects on top of that, like just like the grenades in the previous games do. And it's just a really cool like fantasy spin-off of like the Borderlands formula. Yes, there are still guns, but like they kind of like they apply as much fantasy as I guess you could to a gun. Like a lot of the assault rifles are actually like they're like crossbows, so like you have like fully automatic crossbows and stuff like that. I don't know. It's a really
It's taping like a dinky magic wand with like a star on the end of it to like a pistol.
well,
It's mad.
well, not quite that, but like with the shotguns like have like these these crystal reservoirs at the top of them, and so like they spread out like a shotgun would in most video games, except it's like a wave of like magic energy, and when you reload it, you just sprinkle some little magic dust in there to keep it going, and it's fun though. I like it a lot. Also, the first time I've heard Andy Samberg in a video game, to my recollection, so that's been interesting.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, actually, he's really good in the game. So the unexpected pairing of Andy Samberg and Wanda Sykes as a couple of people who are also playing this Dungeons and Dragons ripoff with you, and they're basically like they're kind of like having this back and forth as you're playing this game, and like talking about like what choices they want to make and like all this other stuff. And it's a really cool presentation for it. I wasn't sure how much I would like the game. I was excited for it, but I wasn't sure how much I would like a totally like a fantasy version of Borderlands. But I like it a lot. The only problem I think is that this is the first game in the series that I've played that doesn't have a true Vault Hunter mode, which is basically a new game plus. So hoping that they add that later on. But They do have an end game where you can just basically run these procedurally generated dungeons to get better loot. And like each level gets harder and harder, so that's cool. Yeah, I like the game a lot. I've kind of like stop playing it a little bit because I don't want to burn myself out on it. Because especially like because I know that there's DLC coming out a little bit later on, so I want to make sure that like I'm not burned out on the game before that comes out.
Is it like a full length Borderlands game?
Yeah, it's about the same. It's about the same length as like a standard Borderlands game, and it actually has like it has. I think because it's trying to lean into that like whole tabletop RPG sort of vibe, it has a lot more like there's a lot more choice involved. Like there's like different things, like you have decisions that you make throughout the story that affect the outcome of different quests and stuff. So that comes up a lot more often. But
how are the side quests? I guess that's my like that's what I'm most curious about with any new Borderlands game.
So a lot of the side quests are they're a little bit more involved than previous Borderlands games because a lot of them are like most side quests they do boil down to like go to this place and kill this or grab this and bring it back.
Yeah.
But, they have a lot more like there's a little bit more story to them and there's a little bit more like there's a little bit more dialogue in each of these quests, so they're actually pretty fleshed out. There's this one quest where you're having to there's this there's this lady who's in love with this other lady, and you're helping her. You're helping her to like get her to notice her, so like you're getting her all these like ingredients for like this love potion and everything. And so it's
love potion's not consent.
Apparently not, but the plan does backfire in a humorous fashion. So
that's good.
But yeah, the side quests are pretty good. Now, the one of the things that I did notice, like kind of late into our first playthrough, was is I think the first Borderlands game that I've played that didn't have a drivable vehicle in it, but like the reason for that I think is just that this game is set up and in such a different way from other Borderlands games because it has an overworld in that like the overworld is basically the game board and you're moving your character to like different locations on the game board and like there are like these different locations are like combat encounters or dungeons you can go into. And so like that's a little bit different, and each like kind of like area is like this kind of like sectioned off like self-contained area. And interspersed between that are these like procedurally generated random encounters that you can have as well. So the game is definitely set up differently from other Borderlands games, but I also think that it like lends itself pretty well to like the kind of flow of your typical Borderlands game.
Yeah, it's so long to not even notice that there was vehicles in it.
Yeah.
Rather there weren't vehicles in it. You know.
Yeah, because I think because like there's not like a lot of open space that you're navigating between like different areas, so it's easy to like not feel like you're like, man, I really wish I had a car, because it doesn't take you long to get anywhere, and you're opening up different shortcuts along the way, and there are side quests on that overworld as well that'll help you open up new areas. But yeah, I like the game a lot, and my wife has been spending like a lot of time like just in the character creator, like making different characters and like giving them silly names and stuff. And because it's
Do you have a favorite one?
Well, one of the ones that comes. So she made this Graveborn, who is probably the ugliest guy I've ever seen. And she just named him Tracy. And I don't know why that was funny to me, because I guess like his face mixed with like a very benign name like Tracy was really funny to me. But then she made a Spore Warden that she named Sportia, which I thought was funny.
That's clever.
Yeah, so there's a lot of options with that character creator too, and you're unlocking different cosmetics and stuff. Then the only other game that I've actually been playing this whole time has been Fortnite. They took away the building for a little bit, and I got way into it, They made that a permanent option.
Stop buildings. I hate residential zones.
Fuck them. But yeah, well, I think like the big thing was like one of the things that like kind of I've always liked the look and the feel of Fortnite, but my brain has never worked in a way to where I can focus on shooting and building at the same time. So they took the building out of the equation for like the specific mode. And you know, I've been having a pretty good time. I even won a couple of times. So I was telling.
I'm gonna tell Berto after this. He'll be proud of you too.
But it's so fucking wild though, because like I know that Fortnite has had like all these promotions and like all these cross promotion with all this other shit, but it's like I hadn't really played Fortnite a whole lot since like 2018. And so like seeing like all the different skins and characters in the game now is like mind blowing to me. Like I had this fucking nightmare scenario where Bruno Mars was running at me with a shotgun and like trying to kill me. And
did he succeed?
Oh no, he did
Okay.
not. But there are a lot of people playing as Bruno Mars in that game right now for some reason.
He would catch a grenade for you.
Sure. But it's been a lot of fun. I've had like a group of friends that I've been playing with pretty regularly.
Nice.
And so I've been actually having a lot of fun with that, because I think that I've lately have been kind of in this like mood to play battle royales for some reason. Like like a switch just went off and I kind of just been trying to do that. So yeah, it's just been a lot of Tiny Tina and Fortnite for me.
With the Witcher DLC, I think I'm on the last quest. If not, I think there's only like one after this.
The last quest of the game?
Of the DLC.
Oh, the DLC.
I already finished the game.
Yeah.
And I did all the oils and decapitations and everything. I have all the Grandmaster armor. I have everything. I've checked out every checkpoint.
Yeah.
Except for Skellig, because fuck Skellig. It's so boring. There's just so many like smuggler caches, and I just don't give a fuck. But yeah, like I like the DLC. I wish I had gotten at least Hearts of Stone while I was actually playing it, but I also thought that I had the DLC when I was playing it. So I didn't realize that I was like, what exactly I was missing. I was like, when is this DLC content going to pop up? Because I've heard this stuff like add things, and I was like, but I don't know where it was added. But yeah, anyways. And then also I finished the game without realizing I was like at the boss fight until I was at the boss fight, and I was like, oh, this is in game. But I've been kind of like.
They should tell you that, you know.
Well, they have like a thing that says like, oh, once you pass this point, there would be like, there you can't like, it'll be like permanent changes to the game, is what they say. So I was like, okay, fine. I'm like, all right, like I already like got all the quests up until this point, so like I was like,
yeah.
I just thought it was like a plot point.
Yeah.
Or like a prelude to the main fight, and I was like, oh, okay, no, this is it.
It's so funny to hear you say that. Like, I haven't played that game, but I know a lot of people that were really into it, and they just talk about like how huge that game is, and it seems like you thought like it was over too soon, you know?
Well, I also used to play a lot of MMOs.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. So it's really hard to say that like when RPGs have a lot of content compared to that.
Yeah.
But I also played the punishing way where I did every single quest. Like no matter how over leveled I was for it.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing with Ghostwire. I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's much smaller than The Witcher though.
I think it's just because I was going through and I was paying attention to the story, but I also was just like what's the lowest level quest I have in my quest book? All right, go do that. Do I pass it as a quest? It's fine. It's great, and it means I'm too over leveled. I'm gonna do it.
You're right. And I feel like that's such a flaw, right? Like both on us as players, but also on the designers, right? Because like I'm playing Ghostwire the same way. So before I progress story, I'm clearing out every side quest, and then I progress story. And I feel like that's making like maybe the game's just easy, or maybe I'm just like way too over leveled.
Over leveled.
Yeah.
That way always makes you over leveled
Yeah.
because it's not like because it's less of an organic way to play it. It's more of a completionary way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but they're letting me play it that way, and they want me to play it that way, so I can get the trophies.
Is there a harder difficulty?
Yeah, there is.
All right, then that's what you should do. Yeah, I just kept like upping the difficulty on The Witcher, but yeah, I'm just kind of prolonging it because I'm not really done. I'm not ready to be done with the game.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not gonna go do that skeleton bullshit.
Just go.
So
I
got two choices.
You've come this far.
What if that section ends in a super cool quest with a super cool sword you can have?
Yeah.
No, all I have left is like smuggler caches, and I just gotta keep like
they celebrate his birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Gerald! It's your birthday.
Gerald?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gerald. Appropriate.
Yeah. Jerry.
Happy birthday, Jerry.
Jer Bear. But yeah, no. So I did finally try the Gwent game that y'all suggested.
Oh, the standalone Gwent game.
Yeah, the mobile app game. It's bad.
Is it?
How is it? Like, how is it bad? Isn't it just Gwent?
Like it was reviewed well. No, it's different.
Okay.
No, so they added a bunch of mechanics and like things do work differently, and it's just like obviously geared towards microtransactions, like all mobile apps.
Fucking
microtransactions. But I feel like I remember it being well received.
I'm a raccoon. I do like trash, so like I played it for a while, but I deleted it within a week. But I did play it daily for 4 days straight. To see what rewards I get and how it goes. And there's just like a lot of like loading things when I don't really feel like there should be loading, especially when I compare it to the PC game. So like I find like the Witcher 3 Gwent relaxing and fun, and I feel like I'm at a tavern playing a card game with a friend. I don't feel that when I play the mobile app. It's like I was like, how did that even fucking happen, dude? Did the tutorial even go over what the shit this is?
Yeah.
Dude, you guys see Slay the Spires free this month?
Yeah.
I did not.
Speaking of card games.
I played a little bit of that. It was fun.
Yeah, and then tomorrow my friend Sean is coming over and we're gonna couch co-op the Kirby game. And I'm excited for that. I thought it could be online multiplayer, but I didn't realize it was only couch co-op. And that's a little disappointing, but it is what it is. I'm trying to think about if I want to get the Lego Skywalker collection because
it looks good, right?
That's the thing. It looks good. It looks much prettier, which it should.
It just looks very different gameplay wise. They were so samey for a long time.
And that's what I was gonna say. Is that because like I think because I bought the Harry Potter collection for all the years a while back, and in one of my depressive fits, I played all 7 of them, and that probably didn't help my mental health because those games are jank as shit. Like they don't really work, and I was just like so he brought up, he's like, oh, we can also like get the Lego Skywalker collection and play that. I was like, I don't know if I can do another Lego game, man, unless it's like markedly different. Because like they're all the same, and they're all made for babies, and they don't like work super well. So I'm like, I don't want to play. Like The Witcher works so well, even the glitches work well.
That's so different. That's such a bad comparison.
I'm just saying, I want a game that works well.
Those Traveler Tales games, I never had any problems with how they functioned. There were some that I liked more than others, but
I don't know what you mean by that. Traveler's Tales?
Yeah, the people that make those games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention to who actually made them.
Yeah.
But yeah. But, and then Arceus, and yeah, that's it. I'm excited for Kirby. And yeah. But this week, though, maybe possibly inspired by Marvel What If, we're doing a What If episode. Well, it's like video game history or just like different likes or tastes. Like, what if something different happened? So, what kind of like made this originally pop in my head was what if
I thought you just cut off completely.
Sorry, no.
As soon as you said that.
No, sorry. I'm recording on my phone and my doctor is calling me right now. So I was just like, why would they be calling? Do I need to get off this podcast to call? Sorry.
It's okay.
I got the black lung pop. Oh yeah. So like, what if motion controlling like controllers actually like hit it big? What if they like put a bunch of money in and actually like fine tuned it where like it was viable for more than just like Wii or family games? Like, what if it got so good that like it was the preferable way to play like fighting games or shooters?
Yeah.
And what that would look like. It'd
look real silly.
It would look silly. Because the only way for it to be like applicable is to be similar enough to like how people can play video games now that like people would jump on board. And it would have to be good enough, like the technology, for all the people who like min-max absolutely everything and has to have like not bad lag, like enough to where you can, like I said, it would be the preferable way for like professionals to play it.
Yeah. I don't think it'll ever be that.
I don't think so in real life, but we're playing the What If game.
Yeah. I think like I do think it was pretty good. Like I think it's better than most people give it credit for. You know, I really do. And I mean that with like every variation of that. Like whether that's Wii or Kinect or fucking PlayStation Move, like I do feel like all of them were quite good. But like the problem that we run into time and time again, whether it's motion controls or VR or Nintendo DS or any of this new hardware, right? It's developers building for the platform. You know, like you have to make a game that suits what you're using, if that makes sense, right? Like I always bring up fucking Sesame Street Once Upon a Monster, which is like obviously a child's game for the fucking Kinect, but like that game was fantastic and it worked great, but like you're not trying to do anything complex there, you know?
Yeah.
But like if it did succeed on the level that you're talking about, my brain automatically, you guys ever see that movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix?
The one where he's in love with the computer?
I'm aware of it.
Yeah. Like in that movie, he's playing some future video game, right? And he's like on his couch, and he's just doing this.
Yeah, dude.
But that's the thing though.
I'm gonna get on Call of Duty. Hold up.
Yeah.
So for this to succeed, like let's just say that the technology is there. Okay, obviously, because this is imagination land. And I was like, and so for it to work, it would have to be where you don't have a peripheral like the Joy-Cons, the Move controllers. It would have to be more similar or in line to the Kinect, where it is some. But in my imagination, it probably is built into the hardware. So yet again, you don't have to buy something else. But it would have to be something where you could program what your hand movements mean. That way it's more accessible for people who have different like disabilities, and also like if you want to play a game, just putting your fingers out and doing spirit fingers, and that's like what it would be like is like I can just imagine people making like videos and stuff like that of like what their presets are for their motion controls, because it's like the new way to go about it. Like like with Tetris techniques, like you know the rolling or like the jiggling and stuff like that. I
just feel like you're bringing up the topic to upset me, you know? Talking about motion control fighting games, motion control Tetris.
I'm not saying motion control Tetris. I'm saying that like, even though like
Mhm.
it's a retro game. There's still like people finding new ways to play it.
Yeah.
So I feel like one, it have to like foster some sort of community where people are like competitively trying to figure out the best presets. And people are like obviously going to be in like different schools of thought of like whether spirit fingers or if you like some people because of muscle memory are like maybe that like their presets are to hold like a controller and like different like twitches mean something. I just feel like obviously if this technology existed, like I feel like that's the way that it would have to go for it to become like more dominant. Is
Yeah.
obviously like all the things that are bad about motion controls when it comes to competitive space, and then also usability, and then also not buying like having to force parents to buy more stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, you know what's funny? So I'm playing Ghostwire, right? And they've got this whole thing with the hand gestures. And, like, sometimes the game will make you you can choose whether to do it on the right analog stick or on the touchpad, draw these little symbols, right? And then the main character will, like, do the things with his hands. And, like, it's all good and well. I wish that was motion controlled. That'd be rad.
So like, you have your DualSense, and you're just like that.
No, I want to do it like Sinead said, like with my hands, like on the Kinect.
Oh sure.
Yeah, just like like the Disney Channel. Like they would have to do the mouse.
I just like when I imagine
like Minority Report.
That's what I was gonna say. Like when you guys were talking about like motion control Tetris, I imagine like if you're listening to this on audio,
I didn't say Tetris be motion control.
But like just
no, I know, but like I would imagine that if there was like a sort of Tetris game, like this is going to be terrible for our audio, only the listeners, like just like a little like flick, whatever like you want to change, like a little point down,
a little
flick the bean.
Yeah, just flick that bean, and that's how you win in Tetris.
Like that.
Yeah, it was I don't know, it was like a fun. It doesn't like necessarily mean anything. I wouldn't know the logistics of the companies. Probably like the we would be memorialized more even than it is now.
Well, it's funny because like it seems so out there now, but I think like you saying like your example for this topic, right? Motion controls succeeding is probably more likely than anything Ryan and I will bring up. Like all three thought that that's where it was going to go. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't. And the other, like, I only have two that are really thought out, and then I have three that are, like, open-ended. To, like, what do y'all think? And the answer might be nothing.
Okay.
But the other one that I've been thinking about is, what if, like, Xbox Live didn't launch?
I almost used this one. I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I think Xbox Live. People often disagree with this, but I think Xbox Live is directly responsible to the success of the indie scene now.
Oh,
we had indie games long before Xbox Live was a thing.
Yeah.
No one fucking touched them. You know. Most of them we wouldn't have even heard of. There's some outliers, right? Like people knew Alien Hominid,
sure.
Or like some people did, you know, but like if it wasn't for Xbox Live and specifically things like Summer of Arcade, you know, with things like those early games, right, Braid and Limbo, and like if it wasn't for those, the indie scene would not be anywhere close to what it is now.
Sure. And I think that Xbox Live, at least you know, in those early years was like the best as far as like facilitating like like a social platform for video games. Like maybe not like maybe not the first version of Xbox Live on the original Xbox, but like once you get into Xbox 360 with the way that like you're able to like message people and talk to like your friends and everything, and the way that like they had that storefront just made it so that it was so easy for information to get out there about these indie games that like nobody was that like a lot of people weren't talking about. Now like all the major manufacturers have their own storefront and they all showcase indie games in their own way.
But they weren't at the time.
Yeah,
you know?
right. And
like Nintendo's fucking Nindies event, they wouldn't do that shit back then. You know?
Right. And so like, and the way that like they also were highlighting these games in like such a meaningful way, and even still like giving like little compilations of these games too. I just think that no other manufacturer was doing that because they were focused on like their own shit. They were focused on like making sure that their own shit got out there. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. But
in a different manner. The facet of which I thought about it was because like online gaming existed before Xbox Live, but it was on an individual game basis. So my thought was that the consoles wouldn't have sold as well and all online gaming would be pretty centralized around computers. Even like at that time, like it was still easier to play online with a PC, and it would just build on that. If there wasn't like, let's not act like the PSN got good for a long time.
Oh sure.
Well, like, and even then, I don't think that they would be necessarily inclined to, at that moment when Xbox Live launched, to like create and like bolster the PSN to what it is now without Xbox Live existing.
Yeah.
So I feel like as far as like gaming goes, like online gaming would probably just be centralized to PCs.
But I do think it matters, and I think that you're right. It would be mostly on the PC, right? But there was online gaming, like you said, before Xbox Live on console, long before Xbox Live. I think, like, as an audience, we were less interested in it then. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't matter as much. Ryan and I talk about we had consoles that had the ability to play online that we just never fucking used, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't it was hard. It was rarely ever like that intuitive. And I think about with the PS2 before before the Slim came out, you had a whole separate peripheral that you had to screw into that sumbitch. And even still, it was like you said, Shanae, like it wasn't like a centralized platform, right? It wasn't PSN. It was like every publisher was maintaining their own servers, and you just use this thing to connect to it. And it wasn't a unified experience in the way that like Xbox Live was.
Yeah, I just feel like, so if there was in my what if world, no Xbox Live, it all goes to PC gaming. I feel like there'd be obviously a much bigger derision between like console gamers and PC gamers. Like if someone's like, oh, I normally play games on computer, you're like, oh, you're one of those type of gamers. Like you just play online. Yeah. Like you're competitive. Meanwhile, console, I mean, it's still kind of seen that way, but console is definitely more like casual, or there would be like of course there's big hits that existed now. There would just be the big hits that are like, oh, they actually maintain their servers. We can play games online. So then you'd have like PC people being like, oh, we're not going to play that game because all the console people play it.
Yeah. It's funny to think of like the shift of certain titles too, right? Because like Call of Duty starts as like mostly PC players as far as the competitive scene goes, and quickly shifted to, still to this day, mostly console players.
Right.
You know?
You would not see that shift. It would stay PC.
It's just funny to see.
PC Supreme. Yeah. So those are the two that I really thought about, like kind of like more than the other ones that like I could see this happening.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of feel like as far as like what if stuff goes should be. It was like I can see that. When I brought the topic up, what did y'all think about? Because apparently you said no Xbox Live was a terrible idea, Tommy. So what's your great one?
No, I didn't say it was a terrible. I said I almost used that one.
Yeah, but obviously thought of one better. So go for it.
Yeah, well, the clear answer is what if the Sony Nintendo deal went through? So for those not familiar, the PlayStation was originally supposed to be a Nintendo console. It was supposed to be an add-on, I believe, for the Super Nintendo. and it exists. You can find pictures of the thing online, right? But at the last fucking minute, Nintendo pulls the plug on it. I mean, like, at E3, they're about to announce it, Nintendo pulls the plug on it.
And they're like, no, don't do anything about it on stage. Because the guy's like about to
right.
And now.
Right. So this is where we see, PlayStation start, right? Sony start with their own console. And this is where we see things like all those fucking terrible Philips CDI games. That's how those were born, you know? But like, it's just
the classics.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting thing to think about. Like, I argue that I think 3D gaming in the console space would have evolved much faster.
Do you think do you think Snake from Metal Gear would look just like Mario and Luigi's like third brother? Like he'd have overalls on?
Yes, I think that. Yeah, you got to figure like that's right when consoles start switching over to 3D, And while Sega was doing it, they were doing it quite poorly for some time there, So you got to figure like, I think it's hard to say, right? Because like part of my brain goes like, well, with their powers combined, clearly these games would have evolved much quicker, but it wouldn't necessarily be that, right?
Because Nintendo has always had a strict brand image.
I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying the quality of 3D and those games. Not necessarily like there would be more IP or anything like that, or Nintendo would suddenly be doing, Metal Gear Solid. But I'm saying
they would. He'd be the third brother. We discussed this.
Yeah.
Like 2 minutes ago.
I'm just saying. I think like part of me thinks it would have evolved faster. But then there's another part of me that's like, well, no, they wouldn't have allocated resources the exact same way, Like those teams would have been combined and thus probably smaller, So it's really hard to say. But I think most people, when they think about that, I do think it's one of those things that gamers do think about is that specific deal. I think most people go to like, well, yeah, what IPs would Nintendo currently own, right? Maybe Crash Bandicoot and fucking Spyro the Dragon and all this shit would have been on Nintendo platforms first. Would Xbox have been able to keep up? Like who the fuck knows? But yeah,
I do wonder. I wonder if they would have gotten into motion controls at the time they did then. Like obviously it was just like the two companies, not the big three. Oh man, it means like no PSP, the amalgamation or whatever handheld.
But like that's the thing though, right? I think our brains often like we just want to think that it would be an amalgam, right? But like that's probably not the case,
Yeah, because I'm still imagining that the creators that created those devices and designed them and thought of how they're going to work.
Right.
Like, obviously, because there is less teams for it, because there's less companies.
Right.
Like, some of the people that were on them aren't going to be involved. So things are going to be drastically different. But I do think that the idea of, like, a handheld device, because, like, Game Boy already existed, would still happen.
Oh, sure.
I think, of course, like, some of the more top... I would like to think that some of the more top talent that's been curated within Sony at that time, and within like Nintendo, like would be working together. So there would be some amalgamation there, and some things that were obviously created that were awesome that like would just never happen.
Yeah.
But I also just think it's really funny to try and imagine if PS Vita and a DSi had a baby, and I don't know what the fuck that would look like.
Sure.
Well, I think a lot of these products and game franchises were born of a necessity to compete with someone else, right? And so if the PlayStation doesn't exist as a separate entity, then we're not creating these other franchises to compete with Nintendo. We're not creating a handheld to compete with Nintendo because we are Nintendo. So we're just going to stay the course with whatever handheld we've got.
Right.
I don't think Kingdom Hearts would exist at all.
You know what? You're probably right. You are probably right. Even though that was a Square thing, like you're still probably right.
Yeah. No.
But like, yeah, it's just a weird thing to think. But the other one I thought about is like, so you guys know about the Nintendo Galoob lawsuit and all that?
No.
So Galoob back in the day made a device called the Game Genie, and Nintendo's trying to sue them. Galoob. It's a toy company.
Yeah, they were a pretty big name in like the late 80s, early 90s.
I wasn't allowed toys. Sorry.
Sure.
So they made this device called the Game Genie. So now you know what a Game Genie is?
Yeah, I've heard of
It's
that.
like Game Shark, but older, you know?
Sure.
So Nintendo sued them, and Nintendo lost, right? So I think, like, part of me thinks, like, sometimes I think I give things like events too much credit, right? Like with Xbox Live and the whole indie game thing, I do think that had Game Genie ceased production after that lawsuit, right? Part of me thinks that the modding scene would have evolved much slower. Stick with me. We've had modding on PC before Game Genie was a thing, right? It existed, but like in such a much smaller, like it was way smaller than it was after, and we didn't really have that shit on console. There wasn't a mass appeal to modding games. Is Game Genie actually modding the game? Well, I mean, yes and no. It's apples and oranges, right? But like, I think like things like Game Genie,
and it's altering the game, which is what modding does.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty significantly so in some cases, right? But like, yeah, I think like had it not been for things like Game Genie, I still think that scene would exist, right? It did exist, but like modding's huge now. People give a shit about modding now. I think a lot of that credit goes there.
Yeah, making it more accessible.
Yeah,
like or at least the idea that.
I mean, it's that and it's Doom. You know, it's Game Genie and it's Doom. But like, you know, who the fuck were you gonna sue for Doom? Like nobody. You know, like I don't know. And it just had such mass appeal, you know. Fucking everybody had Game Genie for everything.
Yeah. You know, I think about like when I was a kid, and this went away as I got older. Like as I got into my teens, this kind of like disappeared. But I think about how like when I was a kid, and all I wanted to do was beat the game by any means necessary. And that often meant I'm going to use some codes. And when I first saw that Game Genie, it was just such a mind-blowing fucking thing. I was like, there's just a whole book with the codes in there?
Yeah.
And all you got to do is plug it in? I can finally beat Jason in Friday the 13th if I just put these codes in? It's wild, man.
Yeah, I remember... I don't know if it was Game Shark or if it's like some other brand, but the one for the Nintendo handhelds.
Game Boy was Game Genie. I think Game Boy probably had both.
I mean, I think that
it was not Game Boy. It was the DS collection.
Yeah, no, Game Genie was dead.
You probably talking either
I said a Game Shark.
Either Game Shark or Action Replay.
That's what I thought I said.
Oh yeah.
Action Replay is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Oh man, so there's like so many kids that go in and they're like they'd want to get it for like Pokemon and they're like top dollar games.
Yeah.
And I would tell parents, I'm like, yeah, no, like this does these things, but also it can like this is a little card, so like it can just damage the data on it enough the game's unplayable.
Sure.
And they've now bricked it. So I was like, and I would give a couple parents a heads up. I got one time I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to rebuy them their games," and said no, and the kid got real mad and pouted at me.
Well,
but it was still interesting though, like seeing like because like the codes and stuff and the game like that all appealed to me, but I wouldn't have even thought to like want to be able to rewind my games. Like there wasn't even like I'm like, oh, fuck, I wish I could do it, but I never thought of like a actual like. Changing it in that way. I think
by that point, right, like the significance of those devices, you know, like they didn't matter at that point, you know. Like I'm sure Game Sharks weren't flying off the shelf at that point in time. You know what I mean?
No, but because of things like Game Genie, it influenced other things like similar that are now
Sure.
made. And so like the idea of like being able to customize your gameplay in different ways is like just so much more accessible now.
Yeah.
And it's accessible at a younger age too. So I think that's like super interesting.
And I know we haven't seen it a lot, but like last gen, right? We started seeing like mods for sale on console.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes not for sale, sometimes for free on console. And like part of me thought that it would have taken off much more than it has. People don't seem to really care about it. But I think part of that is due to the fact that the publishers of these games are very much limiting what they will allow you to do. You know?
Yeah.
Did you have any what if ideas, Ryan, that popped in your head?
Yeah, so whenever this sort of thing gets brought up, like my mind always immediately goes to Sega. And so like two specific things that I think about with this sort of thing is like if Sega had made different decisions in these two different scenarios, like would they still be making consoles? And if so, like how many of their now multi-platform titles would be platform exclusives for them? So the first one that I think of is with the Sega Saturn, and the shortcomings with that were like that thing was sold with like that thing was brought to market with like basically no lead time and basically no marketing, and just kind of dropped into people's laps. And granted, when the thing came out, when it launched in Japan, like it sold out immediately, but like it had like a really slow going like lead up like here in the States, and they weren't really able to keep pace with like the other like things like because I think that around the same time, I think the Saturn came out in like 94, and I think a couple years later is when the 64 came out, and like people were just like, well, it's like, why would I you got 32 bits over here, but I got a whole 64 bits over here. And
you do them. That was Jaguar.
And so they kind of like on one hand they had like really really great arcade ports on the console, but that still wasn't enough to let them keep pace. And even still, like I think like within a year of the Saturn coming out, the PlayStation was on the market, and the PlayStation was doing just all this shit that we weren't seeing on the Saturn, right? And so that I really felt like that hurt them a lot. But then you fast forward like what is it, like 5 or 6 years, and then the Dreamcast comes out, and when the Dreamcast was coming out, at the time EA wanted to, they were like, we'll put sports games on the Dreamcast, but we want exclusive rights. We want exclusivity. We want to be the only ones making these football games and these basketball games and what have you that are going to be on the Dreamcast. And Sega was like, well, no, we have our own development house for that. We're gonna make Sega Sports, and we're gonna put these. This is gonna be what's gonna be hot on the Dreamcast, which I guess is kind of true because that was the only sports franchises available on the Dreamcast. Whereas people were like, well, I want to play FIFA, I want to play NBA Live, I want to play Madden, so they were buying PlayStations and Xboxes, and so that stuff, like decisions like that, really hindered them. Now I think about like if they had made different decisions in both of these consoles, would they still be making consoles now? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I think about like I think about a world where like I'm playing Yakuza on like what is the newest Sega console, right? Or I'm playing I'm playing Sonic on what is the newest Sega console, as opposed to playing it on a PlayStation or whatever Nintendo's platform is at the time, right?
It's a Sega Jupiter.
Yeah, so like, and I wonder about that because like Sega has like, I think for me and most people that grew up with, like Sega is such a huge part of my childhood, and like just one day like there wasn't a new Sega box on the market anymore.
But they did it to themselves, right?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
People forget like how quickly there was Sega CD 32X, Sega Saturn.
Yeah,
like too fast,
very rapidly, right? Because that's the thing too, is that they released two 32-bit platforms,
and that's why Saturn exists.
Yeah,
because the one before it was a flop. You know, but dude, it's so hard to say because it's such a different company now.
Yeah, but
like, I do think arcades, like American arcades, would have stayed around a bit longer, because they were the company that was keeping at least U.S. arcades afloat for a long time.
Right.
And it's so weird. You bring up the original PlayStation, and like Saturn played the majority, like the games that were on both consoles. Saturn almost always played better. It was just there were titles that were not on both consoles,
right.
that people wanted to play. But like, part of me thinks Sega would be doing well. I think that they would still be doing hardware. But I guess I mean that's so hard to say, right? Like, they bought Atlas, we know that. So like, would Atlas games be Sega exclusive? Who the fuck knows? Of course, there's rumors. There are rumors that Sega will be acquired this year. So
yeah, well, it's like, and it's not like, because people will play Sega's games. Like people still play Sega's games. And now,
people still play Sonic.
Yeah,
like what the fuck is wrong with people?
Like I don't. I was actually having a conversation. I was actually.
That's also what the fuck is wrong with people.
I was actually having a conversation recently with someone about Sonic. I was like, Sonic fans are just a whole nother breed of like video game fan altogether. But like, I think that like there is still a want and desire for the games that Sega releases, but I also wonder, like, would that desire still be there in the face of the exclusives that other manufacturers are bringing to market? Would that still be enough to keep people buying Sega consoles?
I think in the States maybe not, but I think abroad it would probably rival what Nintendo does. Because think about the games that they put out. Like things like Yakuza only recently started doing well in the States,
right?
But it's always done well in Japan.
Yeah.
Things like Persona has only recently started doing well in the States.
I think that Sega, if Sega were still making consoles, they would fill that space that Microsoft has been trying to fill with the Xbox in Japan since they started selling Xboxes there. But they would have a much more success with it, I think. I don't know. Because I think that timing was a part of it and stuff like that. But there are other problems that went along with the Dreamcast that like brought along like, that brought along like that end outcome. But like, it's just like a series. I think like there's just a few series of, like weird decisions, I think, where like when it comes to both of those consoles is like, because I think that like going back to like the 32X and the Sega CD, like those are both add-ons to the same console, and like the idea of maybe
that's why Nintendo didn't do a PlayStation add-on.
Maybe because like I don't know, it's such a weird thing to think about, where you have like just like, hey, we're bringing this new platform out, we have games that are exclusive to this platform, bonus, you can stick it onto your existing hardware that you already own. And I think
you must, in fact.
Yeah, you have to. Which and it's like, and it's funny because like on one hand, like one would be tempted to say, well, look how modular and customizable the Genesis is, whereas when it's like, well, no, that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking.
You know what's funny though? Like that's what I really like about them is that like if you look at like 6th and 7th gen consoles, right? If you look at like a fucking PlayStation 2 or a GameCube. Or even, I think even 360, there are ports on all of these that were never used.
Sure.
those ports are for that shit, right? Yeah. Sega was the only one with the balls to pull the trigger, you know?
And they paid for it.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people thought the Wii U was just a new peripheral for the Wii.
Yeah, but this is poor marketing, right?
Yeah. Which was also Sega's problem.
Yeah, that is poor marketing. But is it a coincidence that the Wii U also flopped? I think not, sir.
I think the FGC would be playing on Sega hardware.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Like, and here, like, the whole thing is like, back in the day, a lot of people. I mean, it was mostly arcade hardware that was played for, like, you know, Battle by the Bay and all that shit. But like, by the time you get to people playing on consoles, oftentimes Sega was preferred, if for nothing else, their controller layout, right? Yeah. And that was definitely the case with Saturn. That and like Sega's relationship with Capcom at the time was fucking phenomenal. I'd say even stronger than Capcom's relationship with Sony at the time. Sure, you know, and the games just worked better there.
I wonder if what controllers look like nowadays would be any different if Sega stayed in the game.
Yeah. I mean, by the time Dreamcast came out, everybody was making the same controller that we still get, you know? Yeah. Like, a Dreamcast controller is ugly, but, like, it is essentially the same controller we're still getting, you know?
Yeah. But it has an extra prong.
No, you're thinking Nintendo 64.
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah. I'm not... No. I'm not thinking. Don't give me that much credit. But, is there... As far as this, is there any other what if anybody wanted to bring up real quick?
No.
Or have any final thoughts?
What if FMV games were still the new hotness?
Bro, so listen. So I was on the PlayStation store last week, and like they gave me a deluge of FMV games, and I was like, I think I might be picking one of those up, because I was thinking about the time we all got together to play Erica, and I was like, that's a good time. And I've seen all these other FMV games. I'm like, these look like a good time too. I wanna.
But Ryan, you and I have talked about it. Sinead, I don't know if you're old enough for this or not. You probably are. Like, I remember like looking in like Game Pros and shit and seeing FMV games for like consoles that we could never afford.
Sure.
For kids.
I don't own a Neo Geo.
Right, but like being like those graphics, and it's not, you know. Like,
okay, so I remember. Okay, so
we just assumed anything that was a video game. Like,
I remember. So I rented this game for the Saturn called The Horde, right? And that game had FMV cutscenes.
I did not think there was going to be a D on that word.
That game had FMV cutscenes, and I was like, it looks so fucking real. This game looks so real. It's not real. But it did look like that. Or like Area 51, they had that fucking FMV people imposed on top of the... Can't beat it. It's great. FMV is great. I hope FMV comes back in a big, big way.
I think that even if I was a couple years older, so the same age as y'all, I don't think I would be the person that was like, those graphics, because I just always thought of like, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Or that looks cool. Like, it wasn't like, I never had like the like actual thought of like
graphics and bits were what mattered. Yeah. All right.
The bigger the bits.
I knew it mattered.
Blast processing. Okay.
Sure. You know, actually, I remember.
Master Blaster. Anyway, yeah, no, like, I mean, kids I went to school with cared about it, but I was just like, but look how cute this is.
Sure.
Yeah.
I remember the Sega Saturn had like in raised silver lettering. Sega Saturn, Sega Genesis had in raised silver lettering, 16 bits. And I'm like, whoa, because that's twice as many as I had on my NES, you know. So.
Yeah. Well,
now they don't bother anymore. They don't tell us the bits anymore.
Before we leave, real quick, if a hardware manufacturer, like if one of the big three put out a console nowadays that advertised something like blast processing, do you think they'd get sued? Because that was just a marketing thing that did not exist. There was no
Well, I guess it depends on.
Not if they called it master blasting, master blast processing.
I guess it just depends.
And it was Microsoft, and they had Master Chief saying.
I guess it just depends on how they brought it up and what they say it did.
Yeah.
So if they just
and the inflection of which they
so because if they were like it's got blast processing, then no one's gonna think of it like. But if they were like now it's got blast processing like that, then people are gonna be like, what do you mean by that?
Mark Cerny comes out on stage and
just throws his fucking throws his entire reputation out the window to say blast processing. Then that'll be a different thing. But
answer is yes. Well, no, the answer is no, because it would get sued. No, everyone would just be like, fuck yeah, they probably brought it back.
Yeah, and
anyway.
It's going to be in the new Twisted Metal, and then a curtain opens up, and it's...
Sweet Tooth comes out.
Yeah, he's like, hey, guys.
He just sounds like...
He's just like a guy.
He's like, he just sounds like a regular dude. His real name is Tracy. It's a thing.
Tracy Tooth.
But yeah, we have a Discord if you want to join it and tell us about any what-if ideas that you have thought about, like maybe probably more than you should have in any capacity. And we do have social medias if you want to find us on that. We're not real active on it because we just aren't. And but you can obviously find us on the platform that you are listening or watching us on. But we are, if you ever want to branch out, on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, whole bunch of them, Spotify.
The whole enchilada.
Yeah.
I'm lactose intolerant, and I find that very rude.
Man, someone's gonna say that to me one day, and like they're actually gonna mean it, and I'm gonna be pissed.
I am lactose intolerant.
Yeah, but you don't actually find that rude. You know.
Don't tell me what I fucking feel.
There's someone out there.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.